Hi everyone, this is Mike Andrews. I'm Managing Director here at Novastore, and I'll be your host for this webinar today. First, I'd like to thank you all for attending. This is a fairly large crowd today, so we'll try to keep things moving along and focus on providing more content and less sales. Some quick housekeeping notes. First of all, I guess I should check, can anybody hear me, and make sure that it is clear. Can somebody just chat back or say that you can hear?
Looks like we're good.
All right, good to go. So we know that everybody's busy these days. We appreciate you taking the time to fit this event into your schedule. So we'll do our best to keep things under an hour today, including question period as well. There'll be a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. We'll not be answering any questions during the presentation, so please be sure to stick around and we'll do our best to cover all your questions at the end. So, as a special show of thanks for those dedicated people who can hang in all the way to the end of this webinar, we'll be giving away something very special. Although the catch is you must be present at the time of drawing to win. The prize, as you heard in some emails that we put out, Buffalo and Novastore are combining our latest technologies, and we'll be giving away a package with a value greater than $5,000. The winner will receive a newly released 4 terabyte Buffalo TerraStation 3010 NAS device, and a hot-off-the-press copy of Novastore Data Center supporting a network of up to 4 servers, along with a year of NovaCare, featuring Novastore's backup for the rest of us level of expert technical support, which includes setup assistance, product training, and all product updates. So getting started, today's webinar is part 3 in a 3-part expert education series that Novastore is providing on the topic of ransomware. If you've not seen part 1 and 2, don't worry. They are not dependent on each other. We'll be providing all attendees links to recordings of all parts in a follow-on email. For this segment, we have recruited an expert from Buffalo Americas to join our resident Novastore expert and have asked them to share their knowledge of ransomware and teach us best practices of dealing with this threat. So our goal today, the goal is to help provide you with the education you need to be prepared and help prevent future ransomware attacks. We speak with people like you on a daily basis and know that most of you, especially those responsible for protecting corporate data, are the unsung heroes of your company. I'm a Canadian, so I naturally think hockey. My unsung hero inspiration today comes in the form of a quote from Jacques Plante, who was an NHL goaltender, a goalie, who played for the Montreal Canadiens. He was an amazing talent and was most famous for being the first professional goalie to wear a mask during a game, which unknowingly would also pave the way to the future success of Jason on Friday the 13th. Some quick background for those not too familiar with hockey. When a goal is scored in hockey, sometimes it's difficult to see the puck go in the net from far away. So a red light behind the net goes off to alert everyone in the building. It looks kind of like the light in the graphic. As you can read, Jacques once stated, how would you like it if at your job, every time you made the slightest mistake, a little red light went on over your head and 18,000 people stood up and screamed at you? You know, this is not too far off for most of you. If you are successful in your role, not many people know, but when things go bad, everyone is aware that you screwed up, even though most of the time it's not even directly your fault. If a company is attacked by ransomware, no matter who set it off, the spotlight's on you, my friends. So moving on to today's agenda, our experts are going to first define ransomware and then educate you all on how it attacks and outline the best practices in place to make your life as simple as 3, 2, 1. You will learn more about that later. Now, before we get started, our experts have asked me to run a quick survey to get a better feel for who is in the audience and to help them determine where to focus their attention today. You should see the question on your screen right now. I'll give you about 30 seconds to respond and then we'll share the results. This is all anonymous, so we're not going to use your answer against you. So 30 seconds, please. Do we see the percentages?
Yep. Looks like we're pretty good at that.
Okay, Nate, do you mind sharing the results?
Yeah, so it looks like about 15% of people have been affected, about 43% have been, who know someone who's been affected, and then another 43% haven't been affected.
All right. So with that knowledge now, moving on to our experts. Later in this presentation, you'll be hearing, I guess, again from Nathan Forage, Novastore's resident master of all things technical. He is our Director of Products and oversees Novastore's own IT team. As of late, he can also be found recovering Novastore customers from ransomware attacks, which are happening daily. But speaking first, we have our special expert guest, Ben Delorier. Ben is the Director of Technical Support for the Americas office of Buffalo Technologies. Buffalo provides solutions for small to medium-sized businesses, offering decades of networking and computer peripheral experience, providing best-of-breed high-performance solutions. Ben, thanks for joining us today. We're excited to learn from your experience.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. My name is Ben Delorier. I'm the Director of Technical Support for Buffalo Americas. We have customers calling us every day, and we have had customers call us about ransomware, especially if their systems have been compromised. And it's a tough situation when they have it. But really what we're going to get into is basically the very first slide here. It's a very simple slide. Let me see if I can't take control. There we go. Oops. There we go. What is ransomware, right? Seems like a simple enough question. At its base, it's an extortion racket. It extorts money from the users. It takes control of your files, and it holds them hostage. And it's not just on that infected machine. It's any machine that machine has permission access to, and then it propagates itself over the network to other machines. So what happens is that it takes your files and encrypts them using, in most cases, 256-bit encryption. And that is an essentially unbreakable encryption. If you don't know the code, the decryption key, the chances of you getting it unencrypted is very, very, very small. And it is effectively gone, your files. Really what's worth noting here, though, is that files are the lifeblood of your organization, almost certainly. If your business loses important files, they cannot be recreated in many cases. It's not like we're all still holding on to sheets of paper in the background with a backup of our data on paper. It's entirely digital. And that means it's all subject to the things that digital data is subject to. So there's three basic ways, or three common sort of ransomware types. The first one is the one that we see most commonly, and I'll get back to that in a second. The second one is a lock screen ransomware, where it essentially just makes it to where you can't get into your computer, locks the screen down, and then tells you how to pay to open it. In many cases, you can get around this by taking the hard drive out of the computer, and then you can get to the data that way. It is obviously a time investment to fix it. And then there's MBR blocking, master boot record blocking, which makes it so that your drive won't boot at all. And in that case, you just have to boot to a different operating system and get the data there as well. Again, an investment of time that perhaps you would rather not spend. But the big one, crypto ransomware, is where it encrypts all the files on your machine, and again, files that you have access to, so in Samba shares, CIF shares, anything that the computer has access to, it will attempt to encrypt those files, and then gives you a time limit. It's a little bit like I have your data for hostage, and if you don't, and every hour I'll delete a file if you don't pay me. Usually they ask you to pay via an untraceable method, such as Bitcoin. And then, of course, the problem there is that will they or will they not decrypt your files? So that's how it works. It uses strong encryption to hold your files hostage, and it can be very disruptive to a business. So you probably all came to this particular webinar remembering the WannaCry exploit that has been recently in the news. So it was an extremely widespread attack. It hit 150 countries, over 200,000 systems, and asked for $300 in Bitcoin for the first week. And then if you waited more than a week, you had to pay them more, $600. And it's still out there. It's still in the wild. Some of you may have heard this one, but what had happened is there was a guy in Great Britain who was going through the code, found out that it looked for a URL of a gibberish URL, and if it existed, it wouldn't actually encrypt the files. And so wondering what would happen if he registered the domain, he did, and it turns out that it made it so that it stopped encrypting files. So probably it could have been considerably worse had that particular situation not happened. Many experts are thinking that that was a misstep on the part of the hackers who wrote the software, and we can't count on that every time for certain. So it's a serious business. Let's see. All right. So the details of that particular of WannaCry is that it probably falls into the you're never going to get your files back category. The way that they programmed it made it very difficult for them to tell if you had actually paid them or not. And so consequently, you probably aren't going to get your files back. It was based on a known exploit that Microsoft had patched 2 months before the virus or the worm went out, and it had been something that you could have updated your system for 2 months, but sometimes that doesn't happen. Primary victims were running Windows 7, which is initial reports were that maybe it was Windows XP that was the problem, but no, it wasn't Windows XP. It was unpatched Windows 7 that was the primary victim of this particular exploit. But the key takeaway there is that users who had really good backup strategies, they were able to recover regardless of whether they had patched their system or not. The National Health Service in Great Britain lost a day or so of productivity, which is no small thing when you're talking about whether somebody gets their surgery or their heart bypass today. But they didn't lose data because they had a good backup strategy. So it's a good backup strategy is one of those things that will keep you from at least going out of business. So ransomware attack vectors, the question is, how do you get these things? And the unfortunate truth is that you can get them from any user on your network that has access to your network. Every day you give users access to the network, and many IT professionals are a little scared to do that with good reason. So sometimes you get an email that says, click here to claim your invoice, or open this file because you owe us money or something, and well-meaning accountants click those things, and now you're infected if you haven't updated your system. Messages on social media that go out, and those go viral to where everybody sees them, and it's just a bit.ly link that they click on, the wrong thing. Can be embedded in websites that are compromised or are fraudulent to begin with, malicious to begin with. Perhaps free software that they get that's their weather buddy or whatever that they go to install and has malicious software in it. Everybody loves it when their end users install like 80 different programs on their computers because that's safe, right? Or then there's a combination, email or other messages with links, any combination of those things. And in this case, once you get it, then it can propagate to other computers on the network and other anything they have access to. So any files they have access to. The end result is that any user on your network can expose you to ransomware or any malware. So the MO, you learn how to use this. So the MO is that in some cases it has a deadline after which your data is lost for good. And so it starts this really dramatic countdown that makes some people panic and go quickly pay them. In a lot of cases, the longer you wait, the longer you think about it, the less likely you are to pay them. So they want you to feel like there's a sense of urgency. Some of them have time-based triggers that defeat files incrementally. They're like, okay, I just deleted a file this hour. I hope it wasn't an important one. And it, again, gives that sense of urgency. And like we see with WannaCry, yeah, they got 302 payments as of last check, which is like $120,000, which, by the way, wasn't much for a ransomware attack. CryptoLocker did much better. It was mostly because of the kill switch. But the problem is you can pay them $300 in Bitcoin, and you cannot go to the Federal Trade Commission to get your money back. Who are you going to complain to? So ransomware is a dangerous beast. It's a dangerous extortion racket that you definitely never, ever want to deal with. So I think that we're going to hand it off to Nathan at this point. Nathan?
Yep, thanks a lot, Ben. So what I kind of want to go through is some of the ransomware attacks, how it kind of spreads around your network, and what some of the best practices to use to either prevent and or recover from ransomware attacks. So like Ben was talking about, there's multiple different types of ways to get hit by ransomware. It could be Susie in the accounting department that opened the link and something happens on that email and she gets infected, and her computer is connected to the network and other people's computers get infected because the network security isn't set up quite right, and it keeps spreading and spreading all throughout your network, and pretty soon your entire network is crypto-lockered or infected with whatever malware is there. There's so many different things that and so many different attack vectors within the malware scene, whether it's say phishing email, drive-by malicious script, or anything like that, that you really need to kind of have a good checklist of what you need to look for and protect against in order to really get a good handle of your network and your network security. So number one, it doesn't happen, and if it does happen, make sure that you can recover correctly from it. Just a couple things on the prevention portion of it. Making sure that you have all your Windows updates done, and making sure that you have a good inventory of your network and system. Here at NovaStore, when the WannaCry thing came out, as NovaStore's main tech, I made sure that everything was good and everything was taken care of. But then, from all our security audits and everything here at NovaStore, but then I, did some manual checking just to make sure that everything that was set to be decommissioned was still off and that type of thing. And it actually ended up being that there was an old machine that wasn't part of our automation, that had been started up, or just wasn't in our checklist, and it wasn't updated. Luckily, we have layers of security here at NovaStore that nothing happened to it, but it was something that just taking that extra time, taking that extra effort to make sure that everything in your network is secure, and doing that manual check, like once a quarter or something like that, can really save you a lot of time and hassle, depending on what you have out there. And that's a good thing about the prevention. Educating your users to make sure that they're not clicking on these phishing links or anything like that. That's a big part of it too. And then also making sure, if something does happen, or more likely when it does happen, that you can recover from it. Making sure that you have a good protection policy for your backup. Making sure that you have, some local backups along with offsite backups, some air gap backups, that type of thing. And speaking directly about backups, there was almost what was it, like 3 or 4 days after WannaCry came out, yeah. The Department of Homeland Security issued, I don't even think it was because of WannaCry, I think it was just their investigation, that one of their things was, the recommended best practices include employee training, avoiding clicking on unfamiliar links, that type of thing. but the most important portion of it was making sure that you have a good backup to prevent possible loss after you do get hit. And speaking of on the backup side, one of the things that we preach here at NovaStore is the 3-2-1 backup rule. Now it's kind of archaic. 3-2-1 backup has been around for a lot of years. Probably before I was born, in fact. But one of the things about the 3-2-1 backup rule, you have three copies of your data. Your original data, your first backup that's usually local to the machine, maybe like at a NAS device, USB disk, or even tape or what have you, and then an offsite backup, maybe that's on the cloud at another NAS that's replicated, what have you. One of the things that the 3-2-1 backup rule kind of, how do you want to say, prevents against is not having a single point of failure. So, if your main machine gets encrypted and your local backup gets encrypted too, you still have that offsite backup that you can recover from.
Right, because there's nothing worse. Yeah, sorry, there's nothing worse than going in and finding out that your backup has also been encrypted, and then you only have two. So depending on who got compromised or which system got compromised and who had access to those backups can be encrypted as well, which is why the third prevents that from happening, because only the backup process has access to that.
Exactly, and we've even seen some of the newer malware, search out and try to destroy backups that are locally on the network. Say you have a NAS or a share or something like that you're backing up to. We've seen some of these newer malwares actually search out and destroy backups that are on these NAS devices or what have you, especially if you have these shares open and not locked down. That's why another one of the things that we suggest, especially when you're backing up to a NAS, is having a specific user that is only dealing with backup and having the software that is backing up to that NAS, only using that particular credentials to back up and recover from that NAS. And like Ben also said, making sure that you do have an air gap backup, making sure that if the entire place blows up, you have something that you can recover from. Just a couple other considerations when dealing with when thinking about ransomware and everything else is making sure that you do have a good backup methodology. Write down your backup plan. Test your backup plan. That's one of the biggest things. That we had a post a while ago called Schrodinger's backup. If you don't have a tested backup, you don't have a backup. If you don't have rules and regulations and everything written down as to how to recover from a disaster, be it tornado, fire, or ransomware, you're probably not going to get back up and running.
Yeah, speaking of testing your backup, we actually had a customer in support once give us a call that told us that they had, when creating the backup, incorrectly configured it, and it was backing up the wrong share. And so consequently, they thought they had a backup, but they did not. So testing your backup and understanding and verifying that your backup is good is as much a part of having a backup as setting it up to begin with. If you do not test it, you do not have a backup.
I completely agree. I mean, here in support at NovaStore, we see that all the time. Especially when you think about things like QuickBooks and other things, they put a desktop shortcut on your machine. Hey, I'm going to back up my QuickBooks file that's on my desktop. No, you're just backing up your shortcut. You actually don't have a good backup of your QuickBooks or what have you. So yeah, right. If you don't test it, you don't have a backup. And then speaking of backup, how often or how much backup do you need? When we talk about RPO and RTO, restore point objective and restore time objective. So the restore point objective is, how much data are you willing to lose? Are you willing to, only back up once a day and lose a full day's worth of backup or data that you've actually put together in your business? Or do you want to do backup more than once a day? Do you want to do, every half hour or what have you? And then the restore time objective is, how long does it take you to recover from that backup that you've done? Making sure that, yeah, I'm taking a backup every half hour, but it's going to take me 2 days to recover from this. That doesn't help you a whole lot.
Right. That's one of the problems with a cloud backup solution. So if you're doing a cloud backup solution, your cloud links are usually considerably slower than your local links. Cloud backup is wonderful if you have a disaster recovery. But overall, if you're looking for a fast backup recovery, then you would probably want those files locally.
Oh, absolutely. It could be locally that you are backing up to a local NAS and then replicating that NAS to maybe your home or something like that, and then replicating that to a cloud. You can do multiple points within this. It's just all about how much you want to spend and how much risk you're willing to take. But with that kind of said, just some other considerations when you're looking at, whether it be the vendors at the backup software that you're looking for, or storage, or what have you. I'll give it over to Mike real quick here.
So Nathan, Ben, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. So in closing, some bonus advice for you to help in the ransomware preparation planning. This logic should actually be used for any future technology purchase for any kind of threats, or just good practices. But don't think product when purchasing. Consider buying the company that stands behind it. At the end of the day, most products are similar. A small feature is not worth making the wrong decision. Unfortunately, the case with many vendors in this space, once the sale is complete, so is the communication. Check some public companies for yourself. Most make over 50% of their revenues from services. Who do you think pays for that? If you guessed existing customers or yourself, you're right. Select the company that believes your relationship is just beginning at the time of sale and will not take advantage of you in a vulnerable situation like a ransomware attack. Make sure they have experts on call. Have access to someone that experiences tragedies like this on a daily basis. I equate this to buying a car. I buy a car every 4 years. The car company sells many cars daily. Who has the advantage when it comes to negotiating? The experts have seen it all. They can naturally solve problems much quicker than you. Also, make sure that you're getting local support in your time zone and your language. Go where you can speak with real people who actually work at the company that are experts with their own technology and have the flexibility to discuss your issues outside of templates, and also have the ability to basically escalate any tech issues if necessary, having higher levels of support, like people like Ben and Nate. Look for companies also that their backup solutions have protection plans or warranties, and companies who will be there when you need them the most. So in summary, some key takeaways I got from our experts today. Education. As previously discussed, you will most likely not be the person who clicks the link, but you are expected to save the day. Everyone in your company needs to be trained. Defense is the best offense. The more you educate, the easier your job will be. Think 360 degrees. Ransomware and all other threats for that matter enter through many different doors. Hardware and software vendors like us make money off your business, so don't be afraid to ask us for help. Whatever you do, don't pay. You're better than that. Prevention goes a long way. Think fire alarm, not fire extinguisher. Okay, so before we move forward to questions and our giveaway, and once again, you must be here to win, our experts have put together a few offers as a token appreciation for your time today. No need to write them down. We'll be sending this information to you after the presentation. First, we're offering all attendees a free ransomware awareness checklist for your ongoing reference. This is what Nate referred to a little earlier. Next, exclusively for all webinar attendees, Buffalo is offering a free 10 gigabit Ethernet switch along with the purchase of any TerraStation 5010 NAS device. So that's about a $600 value for you. And then finally, another exclusive offer for webinar attendees. Novastore is offering a free Buffalo NAS device with each purchase of their network and data center product lines. It gets into a little detail, so just hit the link there later to get more information on that. So now hopefully you had some time to gather your questions you may have. We're going to now open up the floor to respond to these. and any that we received throughout the presentation. Please direct them to either Ben, Nathan, or both. Nate, please take the wheel.
Yeah, certainly. So Ben, this one kind of sits more in your wheelhouse, I think. They're asking, do you need other software to replicate one NAS to another NAS?
No. So the Buffalo NAS has replication built in, uses an rsync server, so you can either, if you have existing NAS, you can do it to there or from there, or you can buy two of ours and do it over the internet, however you want to do it. One of the things I was talking about earlier is the recovery time for if you put it in the cloud. One of a common use case is that you get two NASs and you replicate or back up one to the other at a remote location. And then when you need to do a backup, you can do a sneaker net backup, which means you drive home, you grab the backup, and you bring it into the office, which in many cases is still way faster when you're talking about terabytes worth of data than going through the cloud. You also can save some money that way by not having large amounts of data that you're paying monthly for.
Okay, that's great. Oh, here's a great one. Does ransomware typically encrypt all files on the hard drive, including the OS? And then if so, should you always be doing a complete image backup? You know what, I'll take that one, Ben. This one is kind of near and dear to my heart. So typically the ransomware that we've seen is just targeting specific files, usually Word docs, PowerPoints, Excel documents, that type of thing. It's usually not all of the files on the system. It's just the ones that are probably most important to you, because if they encrypt all of the data so you can't use it, it's going to not allow the Windows to boot up, so you can't even pay the ransom even if you wanted to. As the question is, do you always recommend doing only image backups? I recommend kind of a mix of both image backups and file-based backups. Personally, I do an image backup about once a month, and then full backups once a week, and then incremental backups daily, that type of thing. This is another one that is kind of nice. I heard one way to prevent encryption via ransomware is to encrypt your files so they can't be encrypted twice. Is that true or false? That's actually false. So even though your data might be already encrypted through like BitLocker or what have you, it could still be encrypted through a ransomware. One good thing about, I've seen that too. But one good thing about encrypting your data already before encryption, the ransomware comes in, is the fact that if your data is encrypted and you're covered under like HIPAA or what have you, and you have to report breaches, if your data is already encrypted and ransomware hits you, you actually don't have to report that breach because the data is already encrypted. So they don't actually have your data. How about this? This is a good one for you, Ben. What's your opinion on backing up to a USB drive versus NAS replication?
Okay, so that's a good question. It's a great question. It depends on a couple of factors. So if your data is too big to fit on a NAS drive, on a USB drive, you can get pretty big ones, but your NASs can be even bigger. So replication over a NAS would be really indicated in that case. Replication can also go over your network, whereas USB has to be physically present. And that's fine for many small businesses, because what you can do is you can take it off site with you every night, or you can swap them. So that you take one off site with you at night, it backs up to another one, and then you switch them in the morning and take the swapped one back off site the next day. But if it's over a net to another NAS and you're replicating over the network, you can go anywhere your network can reach, including the internet, or if you have a VPN connection, or downstairs, or just anywhere on your network. So it's both a capacity and a geographical question as to which one works best for you.
All right, great. I'm going to combine two questions because I really like these questions. If you have a 3-2-1 backup plan, how do you keep the remote backup from getting the malware? Along with, can you expand a little bit on how to lock down a share? I kind of think they kind of go into the same type of thing, Ben, if you want to talk about that.
Right. So one thing that you cannot get around is that in some way, shape, or form, the backed up computer has access to the backup. It has to, because it has to put the files on the backup, right? It has to have access to write to the backup location, which is why you have a 3-2-1. But then when you back up the backup, the original system, the thing that is likely to get compromised in the first place, does not have access to the backup of the backup. If you run a NAS, for instance, then that particular device cannot be infected. It runs on Linux and is not in it of itself running malware. It is not compromised. It's the Windows machines that are compromised. It's the client machines that are compromised. You're not actually executing code on the NAS. So consequently, things that the NAS has access to, but the client does not, will not be infected. And then when you talk about locking down a share, which is another great question, it's about making sure that your users don't have access to data they don't need access to. And that includes having the ability to give themselves access to it. So let's just say they are the administrator, but then you later on go and they're the creator owner of a file, and then later on you go and remove permissions from them. Well, they can give themselves permissions back. And these software, this malware has the ability to try and finagle getting access to things. So ideally, what you make sure is that your users don't have access to anything they don't absolutely need. Is it a pain in the butt? Sometimes when they need stuff and they don't have access to it, yes. Is it worth it when your files get encrypted? Yes, it's also worth it. So, and you do that through various reasons, right? So, I mean, Windows obviously has Active Directory, and then NAS, for our NASs, for instance, you can create user accounts and require a password to log in. You're not going to get around that password unless they, make it password. So some malware actually uses lists of common passwords and tests them. So it's ultimately you use the software permissions to prevent them from having access to anything they don't need.
Okay, great. Another question, kind of on the same topic. Has there ever been any cases of the backup files becoming encrypted from ransomware? And I can say, yeah, there has been. That's why we really talk about the 3-2-1 rule. Making sure that offsite backup is kind of air gapped from your normal network. That's one of the great things that we really push on. Having that backup that's not within your network.
Right. Well, one of the things you can do in those situations is, let's say that there's a constraint for cost constraint, like you don't want to back up everything. One of the things you can do is find the files that literally your business will go out of business with if you do not keep them, and have a small backup that you carry off-site, or a piece of hardware that's just your absolute last. Like, I understand some people are like, oh, a backup of a backup sounds expensive, and it can be. So what you do is you can get just a smaller backup of just your absolute most important core files, but not necessarily all the cute cat videos that your users have.
Exactly. Here's kind of an evil one. Any reports of dormant ransomware that would wait for a few days and weeks to pop up? Wouldn't that invalidate the 3-2-1 backup rule? And is there any workarounds? I'll kind of take this one a little bit, Ben. So there hasn't been much reports that I've seen on this, but one of the things to make sure that you're protected about that is to make sure that you have multiple versions of backups. If you just have a single backup offsite and a single backup locally, if both of those get infected somehow, or it's only having one version to recover from is not a good plan. That's why making sure that you plan out your backup and recovery methods, and how much you want to store, and legally how much you might need to store, depending on what vertical, if you're in the medical industry or anything like that, you might be legally required to keep backups for upwards of 7 years or so.
Also, you would make a great hacker. You should totally think about it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot more questions, but I think we're going to do one more because we're kind of running short on our time here. Does an encrypted backup compress as well as an unencrypted Novastore backup if you were to compress it? There is a little bit of overhead with encrypting a backup, but in general, you're still going to get compression. It's not going to be as good as a non-encrypted backup, but the overhead is probably like 1 or 2%. It's not that big a deal. I would much rather see an encrypted backup than a non-encrypted backup.
You can probably fit one more in there,
Okay.
Nate. We're doing okay.
Okay, we're good?
If you got one more.
I have about 50, let's put it that way.
Just a quick note to everybody, we will try and get back to every one of these questions after the webinar if we don't cover them today.
Yeah, another one, see, that one's kind of the same. Oh, here's a good one for you, Ben. Can a Windows Standard user be infected? My users are not admins on their machines. Is there any way for ransomware to spread across my network?
Yeah, so it does actually. What happens is that was the exploit that they got. The what was called Eternal Blue was the name of the exploit that actually propagated via SMB shares across the network and implanted itself on computers without having you click anything. So once it's on your network, it's on your network, which is why if you had gotten the patch right from Windows 7 2 months earlier, it wouldn't have been able to do that. But the real danger is that you don't know what you don't know. When, however, an exploit like that becomes available, then immediately it's patched, but then guess who else knows that that exploit exists? And it's hackers, right? So at that point, they have a very short time frame in which they can write malicious software to where lots of people have not updated yet and then get it going. So I know probably a lot of you have Windows 10 at home, right? And it asks you to update like every 5 minutes, and it's very annoying. But you should totally update every 5 minutes because now there is an exploit that is known to everyone.
Absolutely, and even not even these exploits that you're talking about there, those are prime candidates. But even if they don't have admin access to their local machine, they still have access to temporary working directories in Windows that still can exploit other I'm going to call it user execution impersonation type things where they can completely spread ransomware within your network, even though they might not have admin access. That's why
it gets a little archaic. I think this one used a thing. Yeah, it gets a little archaic, but this thing used a thing called double pulsar to do that and execute code without having necessarily having admin rights. So yeah, if it was only admins that could do it, that would be great, but unfortunately there's ways around that.
Absolutely. Okay, like I said, there's a lot more questions. We'll get back to them and respond to everyone after the webinar, but I think we should keep rolling a little bit here.
Yeah, if Buffalo Americas and Novastore are two businesses that depend on gaining trust with the customers, so I told you the webinar would be 45 minutes to an hour. I don't want to lie to you here, so we're gonna start wrapping this up. And if you're still here, this may be the moment that you've been waiting for. It's giveaway time. So once again, Thank you so much for sticking around and dedicating your time today. Remember, for the giveaway rules, you must be online right now to win. When we announce your name, we ask that you chat back with us to verify that you're on the line. You have 30 seconds to respond, or we move on to the next name. Sounds cruel, but we gotta keep in our timelines here. So while Nate and Ben sort of kind of draw the name of our winner, I just want to remind you that we're giving away a newly released 4 terabyte Buffalo TerraStation 3010 NAS device and NovaStore data center backup solution supporting a network of up to 4 servers, which includes a year of NovaCare. So guys, who's the lucky winner today?
So looks like Rich McDaniel is the one that we have for the first person.
Rich, you got 30 seconds.
I actually, yep, I see him still online. If he just go ahead and chats in the chat window, that'd be great. Yep, he is here.
All right.
There we go.
Well, congratulations, Rich. So someone on our team will be reaching out to you with the details shortly. So once again, for everybody else, sorry you didn't win, but hopefully this webinar was winning enough. We'll leave our experts' contact information up for the next few minutes in case you didn't get it the first time around. And everybody, please take care and be secure.
Yeah, if you have any questions that we didn't get to answer about Buffalo products or backups in general, either myself or support will be happy to give you some pointers.
All right, and thanks again, guys, and we'll sign off.